Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Shapiro. I'm the co-owner of Fantom Comics in Washington, D.C. And I recognize a few of our customers in the audience and friends of the store, so thank you so much for everyone who came through. This is my first time hosting an SPX panel. I'm really excited to do it with 3 of my friends. Sometimes when you do these with people you don't know so well, it can be a little awkward, but there's no 3 other people I'd rather be on this panel with.
Jake.
I think I'm just going to have each of you go down the line, starting with you, Heidi, at the end. Just introduce yourself briefly a little bit. Tell us who you are, what you do, why you're here.
That's not how you do it, Jake. You start with the person reading to do right. Anyway.
I was leading up to me at the end.
First panel. Just give them some tips. My name is Heidi MacDonald. I am the editor-in-chief of The Beat at comicsbeat.com and also K-Comicsbeat at kcomicsbeat.com. Also, I do the More to Come podcast for Publishers Weekly. And I am a journalist covering the industry, and I guess I do specialize in business topics. So definitely been following the tariffs and other business topics. It's been a busy year to cover business topics in the comics industry.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar with The Beat or Comics Beat, there's not that many websites left anymore for actual comics journalism. There's just a few, and Comics Beat is one of the last remaining. So I think Heidi MacDonald has been doing this for a long time and is like one of the few remaining like real comics journalists out there. She does really great stuff, and The Beat also has, it got had other ownership, and then she bought it back for herself. Like it's,
Well, I do a talk that's called Bet on Yourself. So that's, yes, always bet on yourself.
Yeah, and then next up.
All right, I'm Zach Clemente. I am the publisher and owner of Bulgilhan Press. I'm also on the board for the Boston Comic Arts Foundation, the 501c3 nonprofit that does arts advocacy. And many years ago, I used to write for Heidi for The Beat.
Yes, wonderful.
It really helped me get into conventions for free as press and make a lot of connections and stick around.
I wrote a couple articles for The Beat back in the day too.
From the retailer perspective.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah,
You should do more, Jake.
Yeah, I mostly did interviews. That's what I really enjoyed doing.
Yeah,
that was my favorite thing.
Yeah, Bulgilhan Press, Zach's small press publisher, is putting out some of the best comics out these days. We did a launch event last year for
Night Ride to the Day and King's Warrior,
Yeah, and you got a recently completed successful Kickstarter for your next book.
2 Kickstarters.
2? Oh,
Don't run.
You got the reprints.
Do not run 2 back to back. It's a bad fucking idea. It hurts.
Yeah.
All right, enough about me.
Yeah.
All right, how's it going, everybody? I'm Mark DeVera, the Sales and Marketing Director at Yen Press, which is a role I've had for close to 6 years at this point. But before joining Yen Press, I worked at Viz Media for 9 years. So I've basically spent my entire adult life, my entire professional career selling manga. And before joining Viz, I pretty much knew nothing about what I'd be doing today. All I had was my passion for manga and graphic novels. But what I found is I actually love it quite a bit. Speaking of the business of comics, it's something that I in many ways love as much as the content itself, and included in that is production, the production of the books, which is why when Jake told me that I'd have the opportunity to talk a bit about that and it's how it's been affected or could potentially be affected by tariffs, I seized the opportunity. So thank you all for joining.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for those intros, everybody. So I guess we'll start at the beginning. Liberation Day.
I'd forgotten that's what it was called.
On the beaches of Normandy.
Is that really what it was called?
I think so, yeah.
Oh my god.
Is that right? Isn't that what he called it?
No, I forgot. You didn't know.
I didn't know. That's awful.
The day that he brought out that big sign with like all the countries on it.
Yeah,
and it was like, here's the tariffs. And then it was like they use AI to generate the different country tariff rates and stuff. Yeah. I guess I can start out in saying that for those who don't know, whether it's indie comics or mainstream comics, like the vast majority of American comics are printed outside America. I would say most mainstream superhero comics are printed in Canada. And then I would say China, I would say, is the next other huge country for printing American comics, right?
I would say that actually, if you're looking at per item, per SKU,
Yeah.
it's probably higher.
Yeah.
In China,
Higher
just because I think there are more graphic novels and books being printed.
Even if you add all the Marvel and DC books together.
I personally think, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that actually DC.
Although also a lot of manga gets printed in Canada too, right? Some
For
yeah.
a
Okay,
while.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right. For the longest time, I'd say an overwhelming majority of the manga was printed in Canada,
Right.
and a good amount even printed domestically.
Yeah, I would
back
say.
then,
Back then,
which,
yeah,
is,
fair enough,
which
fair
ties
enough.
into the
Yeah, I
question.
know
Sure.
that DC Comics prints at least some of the graphic novels in the U.S.
Okay.
I did see a paperback of All-Star Superman that says printed in the U.S. somewhere. So there is some in the U.S.
I mean, I went and did when this all started, I went and just, grabbed a pile of books, and it was amazing. Like, there were some books that were printed in Serbia.
Yeah.
Printing books is very complicated internationally, and there's so many different countries and rates and tariffs, but there's a lot of different opportunities, yeah.
Yeah. I think that so I guess I was for Zach and for Mark. How did you react, and how did your coworkers react when this news first came out, and your initial reactions to how this was going to hit your company?
I mean, so it's one of those things where because there've been so much waffling and differences and changes, so especially because there was tariffs on China before Liberation Day, it was earlier on, and then it kept changing and moving and shifting, and I'm so part of me felt okay, this isn't actually going to happen, and the other part of me was well, if it does, we're boned. Cool. I loved printing comics. That would have been past tense for me for a while. I guess. I was ready to I'll take a break for 4 years. I'll just take a break. That's kind of where my mind went, because it's just me. It's something I run on the side. It is not my full time. It is something I do out of dedication and love. And I've taken pauses before due to health stuff and whatnot. So I was I guess I'll take a 4-year pause. That was kind of my whole plan.
No, similarly, not, and it's my full-time job. So the thought of a 4-year pause wasn't there. There was definitely concern. We talked about earlier how a lot of the manga printed for us by companies like Yen Press or Viz Media, Seven Seas Kodansha. A lot of that was printed in Canada and the United States. You could actually separate my time at Viz and my time at Yen Press, not just from my personal experience there, but kind of how the industry was affected. The 9 years at Viz were relatively stable. There weren't too many market changes. I started working, I'd say, at the downfall of manga. I think a lot of people know it was pretty big in the 2000s. And then it tapered off as the 2010s approached, and then midway through the 2010s it started to rise again. But that's nothing compared to COVID in 2020. I started working at Yen Press in January of 2020, so very interesting time to change jobs and move to a new city. But
You did move. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
it was a weird year.
Yeah, cross country now.
And a weirder year for the industry, bookstores not being there. It looked like a time to be fearful. But what was apparent very soon after that, it was actually the dawn of the most successful time for manga in the United States and the world. Honestly, we couldn't keep things in print. That was the unique situation that manga was dealing with. Is that with these printers that all of the companies that were in this business relied on. We couldn't rely on them anymore because there is this concept of press time. You need to get the press time, and then the units were increasing because of how much people were buying manga. So that made the ability to get press time even harder. Since things are going well, every publisher almost unanimously decided, let's increase our catalog size, let's print more books.
Yeah.
So we couldn't rely on that anymore. There were these tried and true printers where it's we can't get the freaking press time to just print the book. They don't have the capacity.
Yeah.
It wasn't even an option. So what you saw happen there is that every publisher found some overseas solution. Some found a printer in Italy. In the case of Yen Press, we found a printer in Korea to print with. And as the years passed by, a large amount of what we're printing is in these overseas printers. So yeah, needless to say, when the thought of tariffs came, There was concern, is what I can say, but in at least the case of, the leadership of the company I was at, there was no decision made there. It was like, let's wait and see, and I think that was clearly the appropriate action because thankfully right now, books are exempt from those tariffs.
Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
This doesn't leave these hallowed halls.
The paper is not necessarily, that's a unique situation here, but the books themselves are exempt.
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to ask Heidi to clarify this a little bit. So we all freaked out that we were all going to be incredibly screwed by this. And unlike some bigger industries like the auto industry or tech industry that it seems like the government would pay attention to it if they're going to struggle, I've always felt as a retailer that like the comics industry overall is small enough that like the government's not going to care that much if it goes away due to this.
Well, it turns out they didn't really care about printing books. But yeah, books were exempted. And it's funny that none of us actually, a few people did, but we've all discovered so much this year about so many different things. And but the fact that books were exempt, specifically exempted, along with a few other printed matters.
Yeah, a lot of like under the umbrella of educational materials.
Educational materials, and it's
quote unquote.
It's luckily, this happened as a First Amendment. Was a part of the First Amendment, where it's like, we can't censor books coming in, or we shouldn't, restrict the importation of these printed matters. So yeah, it turned out that in this list of huge things that could and could not be tariffed, that books were exempt, and obviously that has been a huge thing for the comics industry in that. It has not affected the price. Unfortunately, all the things that, for Jake, in your shop, you don't just, I haven't been, but I imagine you do carry some collectibles. Things made from plastic that are made in China.
So we've been recently trying to diversify our product more, get more board games, get more imported Hello Kitty plushies. And turns out these other industries are actually getting completely screwed by tariffs. The board games need plastic, and there's no plastic manufactured in the U.S. anymore, pretty much.
While printed goods, like paper goods, are exempt, cardboard printed goods are not. So little game pieces and stuff, those are not exempt.
And for comic shops also, it's like the plastic bags and the backing boards. Collecting supplies are not exempt, and that's a problem.
Because unprinted paper is considered a medium, or it is tariffed.
Yeah. So here's the thing for me is that, and I think the kind of loophole that we get this printed matter exemption for comics, I believe dates back to a Cold War era. Thing. I don't know. Danny, Heidi knows more specifically.
I honestly don't know anything about. I wish Jeff Trexler was here because he would give us a very long explanation. But just my understanding is that it does go back on this. It goes back a very long way. There's also some in the USMCA or whatever. When there was this old North American. Business treaty that was made in the first Trump administration that he was very proud of.
When he replaced NAFTA with his own thing.
Now they replaced NAFTA. Yeah. Actually, there's a language in there about Canadian goods coming in the United States.
NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement.
Yeah, and the U.S.
So the U.S., Canada, Mexico have free trade between each other.
Genius. Also has some exemptions that are actually very favorable for books in terms, I think paper, isn't it that paper can't be tariffed as much?
From Canada.
From Canada.
But if you get it from elsewhere.
Right, but luckily, as Mark was saying, a lot of our paper does come from Canada, and it's beautiful trees. And so there were these grandfathered in, traditions that protected it. But, just in talking to people, I'm sure all three of you are feeling this. It's just the uncertainty. I was talking to some people upstairs, and I was like, are you affected by tariffs? And they was like, we'll see. That's literally what they all said was, we'll see. And it's like, when you're running a business, uncertainty is an enemy, right? So it's just not even though it's like, we're okay for now, it's the uncertainty over how long now is going to last is just not conducive to feeling good about things.
And the thing is, that expands out so much beyond just our own opinions, because you're out of a job if they stop selling manga. If people stop buying manga.
If we don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. Or like if
our
you don't have
business
readers
line.
to buy stuff anymore. So like even if our goods aren't being tariffed, enough other things are expanding, interest rates going up. I can't believe I'm talking about this at SPX. This seems really weird to me, but it's, everyone's wallet's getting hit harder.
And
readers can't buy as much.
I mean,
That
also
hits
at
us.
the end of the day, comics are a luxury good. Like
Unfortunately,
they're not a necessity as much as I would like them to
I mean,
be. They're
for the
not a
soul and the
necessity for
heart,
life.
they are, but our government doesn't care about those things.
It's something that people could read on their phone for free if they wanted. So if they are spending money on physical books, it's because they care enough about it and they have enough free income that they can do that.
Yeah.
Also, for me, running a comic book store in Washington, D.C., a huge percentage of my customer base work for the federal government or work for contractors or work for restaurants that serve mostly customer bases that work for the government. And not only tariffs, but also like USAID getting destroyed and all of these other government agencies and DOJ and all that, that affects my business
I mean,
a
I don't
lot.
know how it is overall here at SPX, but traditionally, one of the reasons why this is such a great show for publishers is that there's a huge audience of people who actually do work for the government and government-related agencies, and they have, comfortable incomes enough so that they come here and buy big piles of books.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's certainly busy upstairs. I don't know. I felt the crowd was a little bit down this year. Maybe.
It was consistent. It felt a little bit down, but consistent.
Yeah, it didn't quite have sometimes you come and there's a giant line of people. I didn't see that. So
I saw that for D&Q, but they were on the far wall
right,
this time.
right,
They
right,
moved
right,
this year, so it was a little bit.
well, that's Tom
alarm
Gold also. I mean, come on, let's be honest. Sweetheart of comics. But I mean, he does the funny comics about cats and librarians. Who's not going to buy these comics?
So, I mean, this is Small Press Expo, and Zach, you run a small press.
I do.
Mark, Yen Press publishes Delicious in Dungeon, Solo Leveling, like a few...
Some indie comics, right?
Some comics that, the guy she was interested in wasn't a guy at all.
Yeah, no one's heard of that one before.
Yeah, like
the yellow lesbian book. No one heard the green lesbian book. No one heard about that before. No one heard about it.
And also, Yen Press it has an interesting ownership setup of it as a company. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So 51% owned by Kadokawa, this big media company in Japan. They do publishing, they do films. They have a lot of really cool pulpy films from the 80s, if you ever want to take a look at that.
They do some video games too.
Some video games they own from software. So
I know.
And indie video game studio.
There's been at least one Suda 51 game that was put out through Kadokawa. I forget which one it was. Maybe Lollipop Chainsaw, or maybe Shadows of the Damned.
If it was Lollipop Chainsaw,
we're diving nicher than indie comics.
So 49%
No,
owned by
I think it was
Hachette
EA
Book
that did
Group.
Shadows of the
But
Damned.
yes,
Anyway,
that's the
sorry.
structure. But go on, Jake.
Anyway, so it's half owned by Kadokawa, this big Japanese company, or 51% owned, and then 49% owned by Hachette, right?
Yes.
Could you tell us what Hachette is?
Hachette Book Group is one of the big 5 distributors. So I think Penguin Random House they are clearly the biggest one, and the one that I think those who might not be as in tune with publishing news have heard of. HarperCollins, Macmillan, so Simon & Schuster. So Hachette Book Group is the one that distributes us and also owns 49% of the company.
Yeah. So, but does Yen Press feel like I guess it's only 49% owned by Hachette. So you're not are you interacting that much with the Hachette main offices that much, or are you interacting with them all the time?
No, we're a client basically.
Yeah.
And once upon a time they owned 100% of Yen Press. So the Yen Press office was the Hachette office. It was 3 people in their office. The production was Hachette employees. Shortly after the acquisition from Kadokawa, that's when Yen Press kind of had this new phase. At this point, we're now a company of 60 people. A few of whom are in charge of production.
Yeah. So, from your perspective from afar, I know your views do not reflect the views of your employer. So you can say as much or as little as you want, but how do you feel like Hachette as a bigger company is reacting to all the uncertainty in the market right now?
So you asked the question of how much I interact with them, and since it's mostly a client one, I don't see them in person that much, but there was an opportunity where I saw them this year. There's, within the publishing business, there's this concept of sales conference. A lot of it's remote nowadays, but it's kind of nice to stay in touch with folks, and we stayed in touch in March. I think it was early March, and that was a point where we started to hear about the tariffs, but there wasn't much certainty. For example, like this is when you and I were talking, actually, when we were like, God, like, what's the latest this morning? What's ICB2 going to show? The news of the exemption, the clarification that the exemption was there hadn't hit yet. So what I can say is that everybody in publishing was concerned, right? A lot of that concern has alleviated since the news of the book exemption has come to
It's
play.
strange though, because I feel like there wasn't like a big announcement like comics are exempt. And remember, it kind of took a while for people to figure out that we got this exemption.
It was like two weeks of news.
Yeah, it was like people posting on Blue Sky like, oh wait, I think we're okay.
And I believe, and there was even some publishers that had had said publicly that they are going they're going to have to stop doing
the whole like
somebody sent me like a publisher was like, hey, my lawyer just sent me this, and it was like the lawyer saying, oh yeah, this is okay, like here's the code from this 60-year-old statute, and yeah, books are on it, and then everybody runs to the website and looks at the link, and it's like, it says books, but can this be true?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this was saved at the last minute. Suddenly the Millennium Falcon showed up.
But like the uncertainty of like where no one is clear on any of this stuff, and the people who really know are the people who have a lot of lawyers, feels like the tariffs are kind of designed that way.
They're called tariffs.
Mark, what are you saying?
One more thing I want to add to sort of put into perspective this concern you were asking about that might have been felt by the entire publishing industry. So, you have a book, it's $20 MSRP on the back. The things that need to be factored for the business of the book from the publisher's perspective is 50% discount on average to sell to Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's not all 50%, but that's the average. That's usually when we're taking a look at this, that's what it is. Often there will be some sort of royalty, the money that you give back to the creator who made it, the production cost of the book, if you're working with a distributor, a sales fee and a distribution fee often. And when you take a look at a lot of those, like let's say there's a $13 book, a $13 manga, the amount made after the cost of goods sold and the discount, all that stuff, might be $1 to $2, like that. And when you think about that, honestly, it's kind of, and let me just acknowledge what's not accounted in that breakdown I just gave you. The cost of freight, the books going from the printer to the warehouse, the cost of the people who worked on the freaking books, the editors, the production people, the overhead in the offices, none of that's accounted in that $1 to $2 that I just brought up. So it's two things. One is that in a lot of ways it feels kind of miraculous that the publishing business can make money. I think we all have the general notion that publishing doesn't make as much money as some of these other industries. I've now put into perspective, what that exactly means. The other thing too is, if you we were talking about games just now, and if you look at ICB2, if you look at a lot of these sites that are talking about gaming news, you'll hear about game companies that are like, I can't accept the shipment from China into the United States because those tariffs are just going to hit me too hard. It doesn't make sense. There's been several companies who are like, we have to close up. We just can't exist anymore. That was the fear, before we found out about this exemption of what could have affected publishing. If there were these tariffs that would have added to this already pretty thin breakdown of how a publishing company makes money.
But 51% of Yen is owned by Kadokawa, a Japanese company, and Japan is dealing with some tariff stuff in general with the U.S. So, I wonder how Kadokawa is reacting to all the stuff going on, and if it's worth their continued investment in this split U.S.-Japanese company.
Right now, fully, wholeheartedly, especially right now, we were talking about, you were bringing up the idea of books being something that is almost a need for people's soul, right? I think in some ways, culture has shifted that way. I began working at Viz in 2011. And I'll tell you that for the entire stretch I was at Viz, from 2011 to early 2020, I would have killed to have seen the success that manga and graphic novels are seeing today. It's not even just manga, like DC, the stuff they're doing with the Absolute books right now. was like nothing. I could have never dreamed of it when I was, looking at book scan numbers of what everybody was putting out. As somebody who loves books and loves collecting them physically, loves the idea of retail, it's beautiful. Like what we're seeing today. I don't know what to attribute that to. Collector culture, perhaps. Just I don't know. It's great. It's awesome to see. So to answer your question about the Kadokawa thing. They can't back out. They're quite happy right now. There's a lot of people in Japan that are happy right now, especially because in some ways their industry is going down. I won't get into that because that's another rabbit hole. And document it. I have to be very careful about what I say because I got permission from my bosses to speak on this panel. As long as I don't say anything dumb, get things in trouble. I'd like to think I haven't said anything like that. I think everything I've said is online. You could look at this all online, But what was I going to say? Your question's coming from the possible concern. Is this sort of is there a lot of risk involved in this venture because of this shaky situation with the United States? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't have an answer for you with that. It feels like right now it's a uniquely American situation. It's like, if my overseas subsidiary was based in the UK, would I not be dealing with these problems? I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a good one.
Yeah. Well, Zach, you work with a fair number of international artists on your work.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, only one of them is actually out of the country. All the rest of them are international citizens but live in the U.S.
Yeah. Oh, so.
Well, that could be a problem too.
They actually manage to keep their visas, so they're okay.
Hey.
I know.
Special persons.
Jesus. But what was your question?
So are you feeling pretty bullish moving forward?
I mean, at a certain point, again, because like what I'm doing it's pretty small. It's like fairly large by like one person, 1 day a week hours kind of press. Like I'm when I talk to people in a similar scope to me, like I'm printing significantly more than they are. But part of that is because I'm kind of angling further into retail than they are. Like I'm distributed by Lunar, and I'm looking to talk to more distributors that are interested in indie comics in general. So like I feel good about finding a wider range of shops and buyers. So like it's worth it to me to try to do a bigger print run on my books than most people do. But I mean, like I kind of have no choice but to be bullish because it's either like the gauge is so small that it's like I'm either doing it or I'm not. Like there's very little waffling I can do. Yeah. So for now, I just gotta keep doing it until I hit a wall, and so far the wall hasn't happened.
I mean,
but it's interesting. Like I think I was thinking about like some of the like big business differences. There are so many between what Yen and I do, and one of the big ones I'm sort of thinking of is like one of the biggest precarities is our vendor relationships because we're small potatoes to a printer compared to what you're doing, and at a certain point, if push comes to shove, like we're gonna get left in the cold, like smaller publishers, and it's just like, well, I guess we'll make our own printing press. I don't know. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll get the Gutenberg out. It's fine. But yeah, that's something I do think about. Is like I think that's actually my biggest risk is my own business partners flinching on my behalf or like before me.
Well, okay. So circling back to something that people talked about a lot when the tariffs were first announced is the majority of American comics are not printed in the U.S. But I wrote a piece about this for you, Heidi, about tariffs when it first came out. I wrote an article for Comics Beat, and that's kind of what planted the seed for this panel we're having today. And I remember there was someone in the comment section of the article saying, well, National Geographic is printed in West Virginia. So like, why doesn't National Geographic just start printing Spider-Man?
Well, I was going to say, that's a great question. I mean, just are there like enough printing presses in the United States? I mean, all of this tariff business is, predicated on the idea that we can bring all this production back domestically. And, one of the things the price has gone up on is coffee, and that's awesome because I'm a caffeine addict, and probably how many people here are caffeine addicts, right? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
My God, the whole freaking
the whole audience are coffee addicts.
What a surprise. And you probably noticed it, right? Like coffee's so expensive now, and you see idiots are like, oh, we can make coffee in the United States.
Sometimes I have a Celsius.
We can't. Hawaiian coffee is the most expensive coffee on earth, except for the stuff that goes through the civets. The civet coffee. And but we can't. And so like the printing press is also, right? I mean, this is another issue. It's like we do have presses here, and I'm not sure who did the comment on the Beat, but we have a very interesting peanut gallery, and some of them are more enthusiastic than informed, I guess is a good way to put it.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and so, but we do. I mean, the fact is we do have a lot of printing presses, and they just don't work anymore, right? So one of the things that people have been talking about is how they even package goods. I mean, a lot of places make paper bags, right? And then they shifted from printing books to printing package goods because the printing of beautiful, Zach, you talked about this a lot. I mean, just segue in my own answer. Like Chinese or Asian presses are just capable of things that we can't do here, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like the cutting edge.
I mean, ultimately, 20, 30 years ago, there was a big push to move printing overseas because it was much cheaper for a lot of problematic reasons. And it sort of caught up in a way where you have a lot more normal printers who are printing at a much lower rate because the supply chain there is much easier. Like the printer I work with, their paper supply is down the road. It's right there. It's in a big block in Shenzhen. And they got really good at it.
Actually,
they got really good at it over decades. They
that reminds me
refined
of,
it. They kept it going. They kept innovating in little efficient ways. And in the U.S., there was less incentive to keep doing it. Like while there may be capacity to some degree, there isn't expertise. We don't have people who know how to do X, Y, Z things with this kind of bind and this kind of thing. So if we all want, indie comics to all kind of look the same, we can move back to the U.S. and it's going to be very expensive for a worse product.
I mean, I'm actually reminded of Josh O'Neill from Beehive Books printed Lab, which is Ronald Wimberly's comics newspaper.
Yeah, on newsprint.
Printed on newsprint. And I remember he printed it. He's based in Philly, and I believe he used a printer that was in Philly.
He did.
To do it, and then they went out of business.
They went out of business,
And it was, and I think in one of the issues of Lab, he wrote a bit about printing with this local printer and kind of almost like a eulogy for the death of this printer because before they were printing Lab, they were printing all sorts of interesting stuff dating back to when print media was bigger in the United States.
But I mean, I'll just say, there's nothing wrong with having awesome printers in the United States again. I mean, that would be like bringing the knowledge back and bringing some of this, keeping a small company like that alive. The problem is that the paper still comes from Canada.
Yeah.
So, because we just...
So we gotta rebuild our lumber industry.
But
paper, and then also the printing industry.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. It would be great, but it's just it just can't be done tomorrow. It can't be done in next month or next week.
Take decades.
And what's going to happen is they'll bring in some people to the plant, and they'll be foreigners, and they'll be arrested. Anyway. So there's a lot of problems with it. And
you're telling me this administration doesn't have foresight?
Has anyone thought of just annexing Canada?
Can Canada annex us? I mean...
oh, man.
It seems easy.
Let's go the other way. Man.
Well, so, I mean, what would it take if we wanted to print, most American comics in America again? I mean, a lot of, the Marvel DC single issue comics are printed, I was assuming all in the same few printers in Canada because they've been doing it for decades and they've developed, they know how to do it in the exact way that that Marvel and DC want.
You can tell too, because oftentimes when people do use different printers for their own independent floppy comics, it feels different, it looks different, it reads different. They're not using the same printers.
Yeah,
they can't get in.
I guess I'd be interested in how that infrastructure in Canada first got built for that, and the network of printers that built that up, and what it would take to do that in the U.S.
Well, the most famous printer, I guess, is now called Transcontinental, right? Mm-hmm. Which was once Ronald's and then Quebecor, and it's like you were saying, they were printing all the Marvel and DC periodicals for years and years and years, and it's a family-owned business, and there's been a lot of drama in the history of Quebecor because it was a family-owned business. But I mean, it's going to sound really stupid, but Canada does have large wooded areas, so they do have really great access to paper, and that's kind of part of the thing. It's we'll make paper and then we'll print things up.
Another part to this that I think kind of goes unspoken, and it's like it's beneficial in small but meaningful ways for a lot of different people, but for bigger, it creates like sort of a groundswell, which is my understanding is, I might get this slightly wrong, so I apologize. At the founding of the country, Canada was like, we are too close to the United States. We need to make sure our culture stays the way we want it to. So they invested in Arts Trust immediately. Yeah. And it keeps building and building and building.
I think now even on Canadian TV, a certain percentage of TV programming there is required to be Canadian-made TV because otherwise they're worried that they would just all watch American television and their culture would disappear.
So you see this like in our fields and stuff, and this is why, for the most part, you see like Canadian publishers being able to pull off certain things because there are significantly larger grants both at a country level, at a province level, a state level, to do certain kinds of projects. So, like for instance, Conundrum Press out in Canada, they almost exclusively run on a grant model. And then you see like one of the reasons why TCAV is significantly larger, and especially before COVID was significantly larger, and had huge programming opportunities because they just had governmental support in multiple ways, not just money, but embassy support and things like that for international guests.
And I believe that Canada also does support its kind of native industries, which printing is considered one of their native industries. So they do have a lot of institutional support from the government just to keep these traditions going. And it's great. Jake, I want to ask you though, no, I'm just curious because this uncertainty, and you're the end point of all this, right? Or not the end point, because the reader is the end point, or the consumer or the user. But how does this uncertainty affect you as a retailer?
Well, I think it's kind of like what Zach said, you have to be bullish, because if I just operate out of fear that everything's going to go wrong, all I'm going to do is put myself in a hole or crawl up and, I don't sell comics for a living because I'm trying to be a millionaire. Because if I would do something else for a living. If that was the case. I do it because I care about it. It's tough because I think, from what I can tell anecdotally, in DC, bookstores have been struggling recently, and a lot of that has to do with the National Guard in DC, because a lot of people don't feel comfortable with just going out in DC anymore. But we have actually had a good year so far. So we've been growing. So this panel overall, even though the world is on fire, I feel like some of the core things we're talking about on this panel, I'm a little bit optimistic about.
But can you help me appreciate what it would, let's say there was a hypothetical world where books were tariffed, because you sell games at your store also.
Yeah, we do.
Have you seen, and that's an industry that's been affected, as we've acknowledged on this panel, how has that affected you? Is there higher prices, or is it harder to get games into the store?
Well, it comes at an interesting time for me because we've only recently, at Fantom, been expanding a lot more into doing more board games, card games, Dungeons & Dragons, Warhammer, and the Japanese import plushies. Again, those are also those are getting affected because a lot of the Japanese sellers feel like they can't send that stuff anymore. And there's always on all the stuff that gets shipped across the ocean, where it takes a month to get here, that when the customer purchased the items, there was no tariffs, and then in the time it takes for them to get shipped to America, when they land at customs in the US, now there's tariffs, and now you have to pay the tariff on it, but you didn't put that into your budget when you placed the initial order. And I think that's affecting pretty much every industry in the US.
Yeah, I think the real shock point before you realized this actually didn't affect us was with Field Mouse Press.
Yeah.
If you remember that, they had books on the ocean, and it was their printer through their shipper who, the shipper who the printer worked with, either miscategorized it or misunderstood the categorization and told Field Mouse that they should expect $10,000 extra on tariffs. And they obviously panicked. What the hell are we going to do?
That's what we were talking about earlier, that there's no clear message.
Exactly. They put a GoFundMe together really quickly, and they're panicking and scrambling, and then it turned out to be not a problem. It was just a miscommunication. But we hadn't realized that as a community yet, that was a thing that we didn't have to worry about. And their printers also didn't really know. They're well, it's happening. We see the news too. Time to let our poor customer know that they're absolutely boned.
And I don't, Zach, you might have more experience with this just because you're a smaller operation, but there is so much. This is why I'm only on the web, because if you make a physical thing, so you like working with printers in China and abroad, you have a broker, right? Do you have a broker?
No, I work directly.
You work directly,
But it's still hard.
right, but there are a lot of people actually, but there are print brokers. Like you can go find someone who will has great relationships with certain printers,
Yep.
right? And then, but also then there's the shipper, and then there's the broker who does it at the port. Like there's all these middle people.
Yeah, the forwarder and the receiver,
forwarder, and like you have to like deal with all the paperwork of all of this stuff. And
or worse yet, you usually don't until
Yeah,
you do.
right.
Because like your printer handles it and then it comes back to bite you later. It's like,
Right.
you need to do this. I'm like, do
yes,
what?
yes.
I thought we were done.
Sometimes the printer will handle it on this end, but there's a lot of middlemen, like customs. When you get there, there's people who are experts in customs, right? And
Yeah, and there's also the whole part where it's
bringing
like, when you do an order, like how does it get to where it needs to go?
Right.
Like for like getting it to the dock is one thing, but you have like the dock needs to go to a truck. The truck needs to go to a warehouse. The warehouse either is the warehouse or it's just the receiving warehouse. Like,
or is it your garage?
is it your garage? Are you ready for a pallet of books at your house? I don't do that. No, never do that.
Well, there's people here at SPX who have.
I'm impressed.
I've talked to them.
It's not me.
Right?
It could not be me.
I mean, there's a few other big things affecting our business right now that are unrelated to the tariffs, but like it's interesting that it's all coming to a head at the same time. And I think the big thing I'm thinking about is comics distribution right now and the bankruptcy of Diamond. For those of you who don't know, Diamond had a monopoly on direct market comics distribution, like single issue comics distribution for decades, but has recently filed for bankruptcy, and turns out they owe pretty much every single publisher money.
And also holding their like stock hostage and all kinds of stuff.
And it's when COVID hit, and it's all interconnected, because it's like when COVID hit, that's when Marvel and DC both were like, we don't like this deal with Diamond. We're gonna, Marvel now does distribution through Penguin Random House, and DC goes through Lunar, which is a company that is connected to which big
DCBS.
DCBS, a big online
Direct
comics retailer.
Something. DBCS. I might have it wrong.
But it's been an interesting shift, because it's like the whole American comics industry was built from Diamonds. I mean, pretty much, back in the day, you could get comics in the grocery store.
Well, I saw today also that previews is gone, and that's it. They're stopping previews, and this, like just the information. There's so many different levels. I mean, I've been covering the story pretty in depth since it started in January and before. But it has. But I mean, again, how is it like for instance, Universal is a Canadian distributor, and now they are moving into distributing comics in the United States. Periodical comics and I guess graphic novels. I don't know. I would all ask you, how have you, the new players, there's all these new players on the scene. Have you guys all dealt with them yet or talked to them?
I mean, Zach, you sort of recently started distributing through Lunar within the last year or two,
I have.
right?
Although I'm really curious, before we get into that, Mark, like, how, like, are you just sort of locked in with Hachette for distribution, or do you have other channels as well?
Oh, several other. I mean, Diamond was our exclusive international distributor, for
Really?
example. Yeah, and for both Viz and Yen Press, Diamond was the distributor into the direct
that's
market.
right.
For those unfamiliar with the term direct market, of course, is synonymous with the comic market. How life for manga after Diamond, I would say that it's still being figured out in many ways. And what I can say is Lunar Distribution, who's this new player that we've been speaking about, has started speaking with a lot of publishers. They have opened accounts with certain distributors, so it wouldn't surprise me I think we can all hope that in a short time, Lunar will fill a lot of the void that Diamond once held. But as of this panel right now, that's not quite there right now. Jake, I know you mentioned it's very helpful to have one spot to know what are all of the graphic novels coming out in 1 month. That's something that you Diamond, for all its faults, that's something that you did have through them.
Well,
right?
it's interesting. I was gonna say, back in the day, you could get comics at the corner store, but then it was in the 70s and 80s that it shifted more towards you get comics in a comic shop. And I believe that goes hand in hand with going towards Diamond becoming the main distributor for American comics. Heidi, am I wrong
I mean,
on
it
that?
does. I mean, but there used to be many distributors, and then there was like a contraction in the comics industry in the early 90s. And then, then there was only one, and, there was all these exclusives. Exclusivity is very, doesn't lead to good things. It really doesn't. And, having competition is very healthy. It helps, in biology, it helps organisms grow and evolve and become more nimble. And for distribution, like Diamond, it's such a weird double-edged sword, because, and I'm sure all of you know this, that Diamond being a monopoly was very destructive. And March 2020, they said, "Oh crap, we can't sell comics anymore," and okay, no more comic books until this COVID thing is over. And that was when Marvel and DC were like, "Oh crap, this is a single point of failure in this entire system," and that is really unhealthy, because you could get everything else in some way.
Here's something I've wondered about though, is I think when we were in peak COVID quarantine time, that part of it was that Diamond didn't want to open their warehouses during quarantine, and Marvel and DC were like, the comics must still go on.
That is true. That is true. But I mean, the whole point is that it had developed to that point where there was only this one freaking way that you could buy periodical comics in the United States. And everything else had other ways that you could buy it. And so that was a problem, right? And then, and then it had other reasons. I mean, I'm going to write a big article, because I have learned so much about Diamond and why they failed over the course of this. And there's so many reasons. But I will say, just to be, positive about it, the other thing is they actually did do a lot of things that were kind of just because they knew they were good for the industry. Like, they did put out this incredible catalog, and they did do Free Comic Book Day, and they did do, like Comic Retailer Day and other things that were just, to be a service to everybody, that everybody could use. And, they had a great website. We could find out all this information about every book that they were carrying.
Honestly, in a lot of ways, the Diamond website search engine for looking up products as a retailer is still better than both the Lunar and Perry.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a problem too, is like Penguin Random House and Lunar. I mean, for me as a press person, it's like, I still go to the Diamond site because it has better information if I'm looking for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me as a retailer, it's been interesting because it's interesting that the American comics industry has sort of developed separately from the American bookstore industry, like bookshops, because the way that we do distribution and ordering is very different. Because of Diamond, because of all these things, and there's this, and I think a lot of it goes back to monthly periodicals, single issue comics. They come out quicker, so there's like a quicker turnaround on figuring out order cutoffs and stuff like that. But with Diamond going away, and now comic shops previously could just have Diamond as their only distributor for everything. But now comic shops are having to open accounts with Simon & Schuster to get their Viz books, open an account with Hachette to get their Yen books, Macmillan, Scholastic, HarperCollins, all these traditional book distributors. And so it's actually, like, in a lot of ways, to me, it is feeling like comic shops are going to have to run themselves a little bit more like regular bookstores, which is good and bad to me, I think. Because it's, I don't know, there's certain nice things about comics.
Yeah.
But also, comics are solicited only like 3 months before they come out.
Yeah.
Whereas, in the book market, books are solicited,
Months.
like 9 months ahead of time?
Now it's a year ahead, yeah.
And we've had a big issue, like we've been talking about, that Diamond puts out this big monthly catalog of everything coming out in a given month. And now that there was a while where even after Diamond's kind of like stopped being able to consistently send us Yen books, I would still depend on the Diamond catalog to figure out what Yen Press books were coming out in October. And then I'll go place the order through Hachette. But it's because Hachette, as this big book book distributor, they don't have a
distributor of other people's books.
They don't have, in the grand scheme of book publishing, comics is not that much money, and they don't have a system set up for comic book stores to know what manga is coming out every month. And there's plenty of other. Abrams is through Hachette, and Abrams Comic Arts, they've been putting out some good stuff. So there's other publishers as well. And so I'm hopeful that in the next few months that stuff can be ironed out a little bit. But in a lot of ways, it's like as a retailer, I'm having to learn how to operate as a regular bookstore.
Something I'm really curious about and like nervous and hopeful is that, you know, I'm glad Lunar's here. I work with Lunar. It's fine. It's certainly not exclusive, and you know, I don't get a lot of movement on it, but it's fine. Some shops find me. That's really what matters. That's why it's there. But I really don't want us to go back to a monopoly. There needs to be new players. There needs to be maybe a whole new methodology trial at some point. Yeah. Like it needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a headache to not have a consistent catalog for everything. But even as a retailer, like, it is a pain that now I am juggling like it's 8 different distributors between all the book distributors, and now that I have all these gaming distributors and other merchandise distributors, like I'm juggling more distributors than ever before. Yeah, but it's a net positive.
I see IPG is another like book distributor. They just announced that they really wanted to have special terms for comic shops, and they carry some really good publishers too, like NBM and.
I have a call with them next week.
Oh, there you go. See, that's it.
I saw their graphic policy article and I emailed them immediately.
Mark is bringing up a good question. Let's do it. Mark's bringing up a good question. If anyone, we got a few minutes left. We got 5 minutes left. But if anyone got any questions, we can do it. Like maybe two or three.
Looks like there's a mic in the back.
There is a mic. You can, or just put your hand.
Or you can shout.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a medical librarian, and I just know every year the 3-4 big publishers that I deal with are going to rack my prices up like 5, 10, 15%. That's just what's going to happen. But like the price of a physical book kind of seems to stay roughly the same. I spend 90% of my budget on digital acquisitions,
Wow. Wait, so the digital versions of books are going up in price for you?
Yeah, but my physical book prices stay the same, but that's only 10% of my budget.
I mean, the digital price is kind of an arbitrary thing that they can calculate whatever they want
so
it
like
to be, right?
I mean, you can look this up if you want to find out, but libraries are, like the California libraries went on a strike with the big 3 publishers. Then you got people, like I'm part of a regional consortium, so we try to negotiate. A big university will have like one guy who can't communicate with the other people in the library staff because he has an NDA for like how he's going to negotiate. But what I'm saying, long story short, like the main thing that I look at when I go to buy all these books, right, is there's a thing called the duties title list. And it started out like in the 60s, like a labor of love. A couple of librarians made a list of like, these are the books you need. This is the ones that are coming out this year. Like they did that from like 64 to 2004, but for 20 years, there's been like this aggregate website called the Duties List. And if you want to, you can join it. It's like a few hundred librarians, and they make their recommendations. You can read their notes. Like I wonder if there's something like that for comics where you could find out like this is what's selling in my shop. Or there's so many things that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, thank you for that. It's interesting to get perspective on other parts of publishing. It definitely reminds me why I like print physical books over digital books. Yeah. I mean, talking about all this huge complicated supply chain for printing books, I feel like for ebooks, I guess there's a little bit of a supply chain.
Well,
there is. They're more than there should be. I feel like it's weirdly complicated.
Yeah.
In book selling, you have stuff like Edelweiss, mainly used for distributing galleys, but you do also have individual booksellers reviewing certain titles and leaving notes.
Yeah, I actually, since I know that I'm going to have to operate a little bit more like a traditional bookstore now, I've actually spoken with someone who runs a traditional bookstore in DC. What's up? Yeah. And I kind of explained all this, and I was like, where should I, if I can't get a solid list of all the books coming out for Viz, like where should I order this? Like, where do you get your stuff from? And he said Edelweiss, which Edelweiss is a website that, it's mostly used for, publishers can upload their like preview copies of their books. But I only sort of recently learned that you can place your orders through distributors through Edelweiss, through this website. And I guess I'm gonna be looking into figuring that out.
Sure.
And hopefully that can be part of the solution. I don't know.
I will quickly say something that I feel like, knowing a few of the retailers over the years, one of the things that kind of fell off between generations of owners
is like online groups for retailers to talk. Like I feel like comic shop owners I knew would use huge sprawling Facebook groups.
Yeah,
and a lot of people rightfully have left Facebook.
Yeah, well, we got Discord. We got a few Discord servers.
It's true, but I think you're missing. You had a weird generational gap where like a lot of people aren't going to learn Discord, so they're not in there. So you only have a certain grouping of people who are going to be in there.
And for traditional comic shops, I would say that overall is definitely kind of an aging population of people who own the stores, and so it is a lot of people that are not as likely to. And I mean, also with keeping up with manga, a big part of it is a lot of traditional American comic shops have been very slow to start selling more manga.
Yeah, no matter how many workshops Morgana ran at Comics Pro.
All right, you know what? Here,
So Edelweiss, unfortunately, so I'm a manager at a comic book store out in Wisconsin. Edelweiss, unfortunately, it doesn't have the same sort of like comprehension that Diamond had, right?
Yeah.
Where it's really frustrating. Where it's like, okay, so some publishers I can find here, but I can't find all of them. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, as a store, we're going to be missing number ones. We're going to be missing the hot new manga series, which is just frustrating. There's still no good solution.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I feel like it has to come from.
Yeah, I mean, we for our point of sale software at Fantom, we use Comic Hub, which is a system that's used by I think a little over 100 shops in the country, and you know there's a Discord server for shops that use this stuff, and they say that they're going to create a manga catalog every month. But that's the thing is it's like who's making it, and who which books get counted. If we're doing every Simon & Schuster, if Simon & Schuster and Hachette are now getting monthly catalogs, it would be nice to not just get the Viz and Yen books. It'd be nice to get, they publish a bunch of other stuff, and it'd be nice to see a lot. But then, do you put the full Simon & Schuster and Hachette catalogs on there every month? That's a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
We probably have time for one more. Hey, Yuki.
Hey. So I have a question that's more kind of pointed towards you, but it's related to like tariffs and all that. I know that Fantom has a lot of self-published and like more zine work. Have you noticed that being affected by everything that's been going on, like kind of the even smaller press?
I would say no, because I would say the people that are making zines and little self-published comics, like they're not doing it to make money. I think a lot of them. I will say my advice to artists making their own self-published books is price your books higher. Like so many people, so many local artists, because people have low self-esteem. People undervalue their own work all the time, and there's so many artists. There's so many artists that I ask them, like, when they sell their books at my shop and they determine how much they're going to sell the book for, I say, like, hey, did you account for the supplies that, the supplies that it took you to do this, but also the time, like, the labor of you doing this. Like, are you at least paying yourself minimum wage to be making this book? And I feel like so many people say, no, they're going to, I'm actually losing money on this, but I'm just doing it because I, like, want to get my name out there and stuff. But as I said earlier, at the end of the day, comics are a luxury good. People are buying comics because they have a few extra bucks, and people are willing to pay money for that stuff. And people, I think people in DC, but I think people overall, like bookstores have been persistent because I think people overall can know that books are an important thing, and like self-published, local, small press things are like something that's worth keeping. And I don't know, maybe that's like a nice way to end it up on. Is that you all got any last things that we haven't really talked about before we wrap up?
That's a great way.
That's like a nice hope to bring us all up.
Thanks for.
We will survive.
We will.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.